after the defeat a few years prior to this by Napoleon, there was a kind of humiliation set in. Oh, we got beat by Napoleon. So he creates these gymnasiums, which were to reinvigorate. It was supposed to make strong the bodies and the virtues and morality of the German people that joined them in these gymnast associations. And they wore these gymnast uniforms, and they performed these exercises essentially. And there was this link. This is all coming back to the body politic. There was a link between the strength of the individual human body and how those individual human bodies would then form a collective, and then that collective would have a collective identity as a nation.
So this is where you start getting the beginning, the foundation of nationalism.
It takes place in different places in Europe at different times, but the 1800s is certainly ultimately going to be the big century for this.
It's an interesting thing that it's kind of because I think it's important to see that collectivist ethos can occur on various sides of the political spectrum, and it seems like there's different routes to stoking collectivist sentiment. And this idea of what I thought was interesting about the idea of the body politic via the individual's body as somehow a part of a larger whole, and that making the individual's bodies, the body of an individual, the health of that important to the health of the whole. And that's a really interesting way to look at that, to see how you can approach a collectivist mentality for a group, in this case, a nation, through the body, the physical body of the individual. And I think in a way, it's not something so radical or something so strange, because of course, what is a more primal and more communal than the human body? Everyone has one, and everyone to some degree cares about the state of their body. So it seems like it's almost ripe in some ways for being tapped into as a way to perhaps not always just stoke collectivism, though that is what this kind of body politic ends up being.
So part of me wants to talk about Donald Trump eating Big Macs, but I need to go back to Prussia.
Okay.
So
put that on ice. Put that Big Mac on ice. Because
we're going to see, I think what I'll do is end with some examples of what we see today. You don't think about it this way, but it is the way it is. That the political leaders have theaters of these theatrics of strength.
Yeah.
And you'll see it. I'm going off back to Prussia. I need to be in Prussia. I got to be in Prussia.
All right. I just don't want to forget that, because I think it's a weird thing, because again, especially in individualist culture that we are in, we don't necessarily identify the body of our fellow people as somehow part of our own nation's health. I mean, there really is not even this idea of nationalism, patriotism, or collectivism in the United States unless it is subgroups that organize themselves into their own identity. And I keep wanting to come back to body politics, but maybe I shouldn't. Because I just think there's almost a natural inclination to stoke collectivist sentiments with people, and I think that the body is one way, but I think it's so different from such a different avenue than we take in an individualist culture right now, because we don't look. I mean, we are a very diverse nation. That's the difference. A nation state and nationalism, for the most part, requires at least one dominant shared identity, and I think the United States No, you don't think so?
That's the hope that it doesn't. That's the hope of America. That's the hope of America.
Well,
I
no,
think
no,
you should
no, no,
clip
no, no,
that.
no, because this is the thing. You would have your national dominant identity would be American. You would identify as an American. And that would be the positive form of nationalism, which is doesn't matter your race, doesn't matter your religion, doesn't matter your whatever other differences you can have, you're still an American, which is part of what has made the United States successful for the long haul in having so many diverse people, is because that type of nationalism actually has worked. People do come here from a completely different background, the other side of the world, completely different religion, have a child, and that child is American and they feel part of America. Now, of course, this has come under tension more than ever now. And I think that in some regards, you can blame the kind of identity politics that we see today that breaks off groups into smaller identities. And many times these groups tend to attack the idea of American identity or a larger shared identity, and they prefer to recede into a smaller group. But oftentimes that requires rejecting participation in a different identity. And, that's a hard thing, because there's the idea that, well, you want to come to a country, you want to immigrate, but you don't want to completely transform yourself. You want to be able to maintain your identity as an individual, your background, all that. But there does need to be a degree to which you accept a new identity, that of the new country that you're in, because that's what ties everybody together, that shared identity, that shared fate, in a sense, where, well, we're all in the same boat. So we all are, in a way, maybe we disagree about how we get there, but we're all rooting for the boat to succeed and to keep afloat. Once you start to divide that boat into different sections, well, then, does it stay afloat?